Welcome to a new episode of Deb Marlowe's Regency Kitchen. Today we're going to do a Devonshire apple cake. And I chose this recipe because it's inspired by a character in my new book, Why Do Earls Fall in Love? And the Earl of Widden is from Devonshire, and this cake is one of the few fond childhood memories he has. So I thought it'd be fun to do some research and find some recipes and see how it turns out. So when I started doing the research on this recipe, I found that there were two versions out there. The first one is more scone and crumbly like. It's made with cutting the cold butter into flour. And I've actually done a couple recipes for Deb Marlowe's Regency Kitchen like that, making scones and making heava cake. And so I thought it would be different and fun to do a lighter, more modern version of the apple cake. So I did a little digging and I combined a couple recipes and I came up with this one. And it sounds really good, so I'm excited to try it. So Why Do Earls Fall in Love is the last book in my series of unconventional courtships. And this series is about a close-knit group of Regency gentlemen. And each of them has had a lack of love and security, positivity in their own families. And as a result, they've really bonded together. And one of the themes I've really enjoyed exploring in this series is the different ways that people show and accept love. So in this one comes straight from my heart and really from my family. In this story, Why Do Earls Fall in Love, the heroine Charlotte is a really good listener, and she picks up on some of the little clues that Widden leaves, and she uses one of the techniques she uses to show him that she's listening and that she's caring is food. Like in my family, if you love someone, you make them some food. Something special, a special treat like that is I think one of the ways, a valid way that even today we still show our love. So let's make our apple cake. Here are the ingredients for our Devonshire apple cake. We have all-purpose flour, salt, baking powder, cinnamon and cloves, unsalted butter, a mix of granulated and brown sugar, 4 eggs, 3 large apples. I'm using Granny Smith's, but you can use any combination or kind of baking apple that you like or prefer. Some milk, some vanilla, and a bit of turbinado sugar to sprinkle on top at the end. Also, before you get started, take your 8-inch springform pan and line it with a piece of parchment paper and then grease the sides so you're all ready to go. Now the next step is to add the wet and dry ingredients together, and I did want to make a note that if you want to go for a more rustic cake, you can use wheat flour or a mix. I used all-purpose flour mostly because I'm going to try to get my valiant husband to eat this because he loves apple things. But if you wanted to go for a more rustic, historical type cake, you could substitute or substitute part of the flour for whole wheat flour. You can see the butter and sugars are all creamed together and creamy and light, and I've added in the vanilla, and now I'm going to put in the milk. And I'm going to crack in the eggs one at a time, but I need 2 hands to do that, so I'll be back in a second. I've mixed my wet and dry ingredients together, and I've got this silky, a little bit heavy batter, and I'm going to put 3/4 of it into my already prepared pan. And I've chopped up my apples, cored and peeled and sliced and chopped them up. And when I'm slicing apples for a dish like this, I always chop them up and put them in some cold water with a little bit of lemon juice to keep them from browning so they still look nice and fresh. And I'm going to layer 3/4 of my batter into my prepared pan, and then I'm going to add half of the apples on top of that. There's 3/4 of the batter with half of the apples spread on top. Now I'm going to put the last bit of the batter on top of there and spread the apples, the last half of the apples on top of that into a second layer. Now that's the second layer done. And the very last thing we're going to do is take the turbinado sugar and sprinkle it over the top of the apples. Okay. Now I'm going to put it in the oven at 350 for 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then we'll see how it looks when it's all finished. Here it is, Devonshire apple cake. It smells really good. Valiant husband says it looks edible. I told him he was damning me with faint praise. Several of the recipes suggested that it would be really good with clotted cream, so maybe that'll be the next recipe I try. I'll let you know how it turns out.